Hey, thank you for clicking on this video about Hardin that you've already liked and commented on. No time for jokes though, let's just jump right on into the big book of Hardin. What the? Man, I really need to learn how to read. Some tragedies in this world can feel like they've been pre-orchestrated. The pieces fall in such a way that it has to be deliberate, like the hand of God has moved in to bring ruin upon the world and its people. The name Hardin will forever be seen in the history of Archanea as the Dark Emperor, a man whose tyrannical reign over the land more than earned him the name and infamy. But once, the name Hardin was known for being the Great Coyote, a prince with an unyielding sense of justice and honor who fought for the good of the world. But when the hand of fate wove a string of events far beyond his control, the proud Coyote would end up being nothing more than a rabid hound. A tragedy further impacted by just how much promise this young man showed for the land of Archanea. But you know, I'm getting ahead of myself. We should start at the beginning of Hardin's tale. Born as the younger brother of the King of Arulis, a kingdom on the northern part of the Archanean continent, he was forced into the role of de facto king when his brother started to grow ill and had no heir to take the reins of the kingdom from him. Hardin wasted no time in setting right some of the issues of his homeland, like the slave trade going on in the Aurelian plains. 4 of those liberated slaves, Moshia, Violin, Sedger, and Wolf, would come to form Hardin's most elite and trusted squad of knights, the Wolf Guard. Which, riddle me this, are they named the Wolf Guard because they guard the wolf, or because their leader is a guy who is named Wolf? Regardless, Hardin and the Wolf Guard made a name for themselves as an elite cavalry unit, and Hardin himself was infamous enough for even the Princess of Macedon to know of him, as evidenced by their interaction in BSFE. The Wolf Guard's greatest task came just a few months before the start of FE1. Camus of Grust sought to protect the Archanean princess, Nina, from the clutches of the dark dragon Medeus, and he thought Hardin was the man he could trust with the dangerous task. With the fate of Archanea, and by extent the world, riding on his back, Hardin sheltered the princess for nearly half a year before he got to team up with Prince Marth, and from there, we can finally start describing Hardin's tale as the player sees it in the first game, and we'll start by describing Hardin's unit quality. Now you might ask what in the hell that has to do with his character, and that's a fair statement. But in FE1, you weren't really designed to get attached to characters, you were designed to get attached to units. And Hardin was a very good unit. He was one of the best classes in the game, he had great base stats, great growths. From the moment you got Hardin, he was a capable warrior that almost any player would see the usefulness of. Meaning that most people who played FE1 would distinctly remember Hardin more than most of the roster. Further helping this fact was his unique portrait. It's pretty hard to really remember who was who among the archers who look to the right and have their quiver kinda showing, but if you can't remember the dude with the turban when he's the only dude with the turban, something might be wrong with you. Hardin's fantastic unit capability isn't just respected by the player, it's respected in-universe as well. For his accomplishments in the war, Hardin is chosen by Nina to be her husband, and the two were arranged to be wed because this was the age of women's hands in marriage being sold as real estate contracts. As Book 1 of Marth's tale ends, Hardin seems to have it all: a wonderful wife, loyal and kind friends, and the throne to the greatest nation on the continent. But alas, this was the beginning of the end for Hardin, as it's his marriage to Nina that ultimately started his downward spiral into darkness. And so, that wraps up Book 1 of Marth's Tale. But as you know, Marth's Tale has 2 books. Hell? Oh! It's a list of the Fire Emblem MS Paint patrons! Wow! They're normally written in Impact font. That's right, FE MS Paint has a Patreon, and you can join it for as low as $3 a month and get access to all kinds of cool stuff, like early access to videos, shoutouts on videos, and polls to decide the future content on the channel. That's actually all you get, really. Regardless, I'd like to thank some of those patrons before we go on with the video. Those patrons include Dell, follow Pen to the North Star on Twitch, subscribe to Great Riek, Green Brigand, Hell on Heelys, Hollow, Kieran Morin, Nember, Nevrix, Rangerman Sam, Rurio Carroll, Ryan Walter, Space1255, Steph D, Brentendo11, Drew Hack, Lightning Bolt, and Michael Hamilton. Thank all of you for your continued support, and it's time to start Book 2 of Hardin's Tale. At the start of Mystery of the Emblem Book 2, Marth is instructed by Hardin to go quell a rebellion in Grust, as its citizens have rebelled against Archanean occupation with the assistance of their former general, Lorenz. At first, Marth is willing to comply, but the circumstances around it start to cause doubts in his mind. Hardin's general, a man named Lang, is wicked to his core, committing banditry and murder on rebels and innocents alike. Furthermore, Marth knows Lorenz. He's a man of outstanding character, and not one who would start something like this without having a good reason. A villager in Grust also remarks that they were doing just fine under Lorenz's rule until Hardin himself put Lang in charge, and it was Lang's tyrannical rule over Grust that forced the citizens to rebel against Archaea. The whole situation just doesn't make any sense to Marth. Why would Hardin seemingly sabotage the innocent nation of Grust? Well, when Marth finally meets with Lorenz, he gets his answer, though it's one Marth wishes he didn't hear. Lorenz remarks that this whole rebellion was an intricate plan set up by Hardin. By making a known douchebag like Lang lead the Grustian occupation, he essentially put Grust on a timer. How much of Lang's bullshit were they willing to tolerate before they finally cracked? And when they did finally crack and rebel against him, Hardin would have a reason to completely overtake the nation and make it part of the Archaea Empire fully. Lorenz uses his final breath to warn Marth that Hardin is no longer the man that they once knew and fought beside, and thus, the doubts on Hardin's character start to form in both the minds of Marth and of the player. But Marth is still hopeful for his friend. Even after the dying words of Lorenz, Marth complies with Lang's word and goes out to do more of Hardin's commands. However, as Lang's asshole moves stack upon each other, Marth and Jagan decide that they have had enough, and they tell him to fuck off as they go out to save Grust's royal family from Lang's clutches. However, while they are out doing that, Hardin brings down the hammer on Marth's home of Altia, overtaking it and capturing it for himself. Here, any doubts as to Hardin's character are fully expelled. Hardin is clearly not the same man he was in the previous war. His conquering of Altia had to be premeditated. There's no way he had the troops ready to conquer an entire nation so quickly and ready after Marth rejected Lang. No, everything Marth had been doing was another orchestrated move by Hardin. He was lured away from his home and goaded into defying Hardin, giving Hardin an excuse to conquer Altia without seeming like an aggressor. Hardin's ability to do this kind of thing twice is a level of wicked genius I feel deserves some begrudging respect. But this begs the million-dollar question. What in the fuck happened to Hardin? The tyrant he's become now is almost unbelievable when you remember the man he once was. Before Marth can get an answer as to what happened to the old Hardin, he meets the new Hardin in battle against the Empire's forces. Here, Hardin spews some strange nonsense about how he must destroy the disgusting world and that he is the ruler of the entire world. In his inventory, the player can notice this funky little item called the Dark Sphere, which makes him completely invincible. Well, an item of that name certainly can't be anything good, and it's not until Marth meets Gateau and Kadeen that he learns the truth as to the Dark Sphere and Hardin's change in demeanor. Gateau says that the dark orb he's carrying is an ancient magical gem that enhances one's power. With its power, one could do any Herculean feat with ease. Win any battle, scale any mountain, invade Russia in the winter, you have no limits. But the power of the sphere is not one without repercussions. It preys upon the mind's sorrow, rage, and regrets. It can overtake the user's mind and destroy their soul, leaving them as a husk that is more monster than man. While this explanation answers the question of why Hardin has changed, two new questions have been put in its place. One, how did Hardin come into possession of such a powerful and twisted artifact? And two, how did the great Coyote not have the will and mental fortitude to resist its evil clutches? This scene with Gateau also serves to put a false hope in Marth in the player's mind. Since Hardin's mind is not his own, perhaps if the Dark Sphere is removed, Hardin can be saved. So the players expect him to be able to save Hardin like they could enemies before him, you know, Navarre, Castor, etc. The belief that he can be saved just serves to make his inevitable death more tragic. It's just one small scene, but it serves a great impact on the narrative overall. Going back to the question of how Hardin came into contact with the Dark Sphere, Zane and Gateau have the answer. Literally dying could not stop Garnet from being the biggest fucking cunt in all of Arcanea. After the Dark Wizard was killed by Marth and his army in the First War, his soul was able to linger on, and he was able to be kept alive by the power of the Dark Sphere. And Garnet picked up right where he left off in the last game. He wanted to bring the world under the rule of the Dark Dragon Medeus, so he used Hardin as a puppet to his goal, and gave him the Dark Sphere to corrupt him into his loyal lapdog. So with that answered, only one question remained. Why was Hardin able to be influenced by the sphere? He was a man who had the love and respect of the whole continent. How could he have faltered? Well, it turns out he had the love of everyone, except the one person whose love mattered most to him. Hardin had fallen in love with Princess Nina during the months he protected her during the previous war, so when she had chosen him to be her husband and the King of Arcanea, he was overjoyed that his feelings were mutual. But as their marriage went on, Hardin had learned the truth. It was not because Nina loved him that he had been chosen. Nina was pressured by Bishop Boa into choosing a husband so that her nation could have a king. Her marriage was of obligation, not love. In truth, Nina had fallen in love with the Sable Knight Camus when he sheltered her for 2 years before passing her on to Hardin. When Hardin learned this, he was overcome with despair and locked himself away to collect his thoughts. And it was in this moment of weakness, perhaps the only time that Hardin was lost to despair, that Garnet descended upon him and corrupted him with the Dark Sphere's influence. Hardin's soul was lost to his pain and sorrow, and he became nothing more than a husk for Medeus and Garnet to use as they pleased. And it's this husk that stands before Marth, armed and ready to strike him down for Medeus' ambitions. Hardin tells Marth that he always hated him, that he was always jealous of Marth for how great of a hero he was. However, it's worth noting that this is likely the corruption of the Dark Sphere talking, as when Hardin is slain, he managed to return to himself for a brief moment. Here, he apologizes for being too weak to fight the demons within him, both the literal demon of the Dark Sphere and the metaphorical demon of heartbreak. With his dying breath, he wants Marth to deliver Nina one final message. That in spite of her feelings towards him, and despite everything that he's done, he wanted her to know that he truly loved her, all the way to the very end. Hardin is such a great tragedy because in reality, his fall from grace doesn't have a true villain. Sure, Garnet and the Dark Sphere used him, but the events that led to his heart being that weak has no real evil person enabling them. It's not like, say, Zephiel, where Desmond was the clear villain or something like that. Hardin, Boa, Nina, Camus, they were all doing what they thought was right. But because of that, the pieces of their lives fell in such a way that brought down not only themselves, but all those around them. It's a fall from grace that's just the right amount of pain for me to love. And I hope all of you watching can come to appreciate the downfall of the man once revered as the Great Coyote. Thank you guys so much for watching yet another MS Paint character analysis. What with the Reed brothers, Raedric, and now Hardin all done in this year, this is kind of becoming the villain show, which I'm okay with. As always, I want to thank my guy, the Green Brigand, for helping out proofreading the script and just talking over the thing with me. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the Patron, you know all that junk. And I will see you next time. Take care.
Change the world. My final message. Goodbye.